Welcome. This is GT identification. It is our second of the 3 or 4 mandated trainings that you all had at the beginning of this 2017-2018 school year. If you did attend the training, hopefully this is a brief overview to help you review. And if you haven't, again, this is much shorter than our original training, but I would like you to be able to hear me, follow along, and hopefully have some more questions answered. What I would like you to do if you have not gone to the training is answer a few questions and then send those to me so I can document that you followed up with this training, and then I will talk with you again at your monthly site visit. So a few things that I'd like you to be paying attention to during the training today are: what are the primary identification pathways when we're working on identifying a child as being ALP eligible? What data is needed in order to qualify a child? What reports should we be pulling from Enrich Frontline? And those are the reports to see students that are either already on ALPs or are in the process of being identified. And what are the main assessments that our district uses? So let's begin. Please, again, if you are just following this for the first time, make sure to answer those questions. Our contact information is on that front page. Remember, Christy is on leave right now, and she will be back in January. In the interim, I'm working with all the charters. When she returns, it will be the two of us working with you. So the state mandates just for basic compliance, and of course our big goal for this year is to go far beyond compliance and move into real programming, and whatever that can be, either starting at the very beginning or expanding on what you're already doing to make a real impact on these gifted children. The reason why it's compliance, it is tied to different laws, including the ECEA, where it doesn't just include students with disabilities, it includes gifted students as well, based on research data, history of what we know gifted children need. At a minimum, each school will have a designated point of contact for gifted and talented. That's each of you. Within the charter schools, it is a variety of individuals. We've got principals, vice principals, teachers, and counselors that are all serving in that role. Identification of students will take place each year, including universal sweeps, and I'll talk about what we mean by universal sweeps. In our district, we use the Nagliari assessment, and that's called the NNAT. And then all gifted students identified as gifted or magnet qualified will have an advanced learning plan. And related, of course, then is the programming that goes with that. As a quick overview for gifted and talented, that's going to be at the 95th percentile typically on a variety of academic or achievement or cognitive assessments, and we'll go through that today. Magnet qualified is for students that are even further into that range. It's in the 97th to 99th percentile, where magnet qualified simply means they're into the higher range of giftedness, and our district does offer several, I believe it's 6 or 7 elementary schools that are magnet schools for magnet qualified students. So what's different at those schools is their teachers, their administrators all have that additional training, and those children then as well, if they choose to go there, are with all children that are magnet eligible. So there can be a lot of benefit there, both academically and cognitively, socially, as far as kids that get each other. That said, of course, just because a child's magnet qualified does not mean they go to a magnet. In fact, the vast majority do not, especially if they're already going to charters. I think our families are often going to our charters in the first place because they were looking for a special niche. Maybe the traditional model wasn't working well for their children. And so most children and their families stay at their current school. But it is a great indicator for you to know, if a child's magnet qualified, that doesn't mean they have an ALP. They still need 3 data points, just like any other child. It does mean, though, they scored so highly on a cognitive assessment, in this case typically the NNAT in the district, that we want to make sure that we're doing services and programming for them. So we're going to try to get them through that process, that identification process, along with everyone else. The NNAT happens in a sweep, and this is something special about DPS. I don't know of other districts. checking as often, but we're trying to cast a net and capture those kiddos as soon as possible. So we start first in kindergarten, and all of our kindergartners do that assessment. And then again in second grade, and then again in sixth grade. And again, a lot of districts just do that once. It is state mandated to do at least once. Because when we used to ask teachers to identify, a lot of times, unless they had additional training, actually the teachers picked the exact children that were not gifted. And there's a lot of children, English language learners, students with twice exceptionalities, students that are more shy, a whole number of reasons why children were not being identified. So by testing everyone, we're capturing more of those kiddos. We also use the NNAT because it is nonverbal. It does a better job of identifying gifted children that might be underidentified and underserved historically and current day. If you have questions related to any of our assessments, Stacy Pendleton, and that's her information there, is who you would contact. You can also reach me and I'll forward you on to Stacy, but Stacy would help you with any identification assessment questions. So that's a bit on the NNAT. We also have the COGAT, which it takes a little bit longer, but it's a relatively quick cognitive assessment as well. It is not something we would blanket test, but if you have children that maybe we don't have their data, we've got a lot of other data, but they didn't do the NNAT, for some reason we need to do a follow-up, you can nominate and do assessments for a smaller subset. Those are in first, third, fourth, fifth, and seventh grade. Some of you at the high school level then have asked, what do we do at the high school level? We'll talk about that. But again, we want to keep thinking of identification is important, but we want to keep focusing on programming as well. That said, I do want to let you know also, if you did not get a list yet, I can send you a list of all the qualifying assessments that you can use. So if you're wanting a list, what can be done besides the NNAT and the COGAT, ask me for that list and I will send it your way if you do not yet have it. If you're looking up more information on identification, please keep going back to that GT Teacher Handbook. There's an identification tab. You can also use the search bar at the top. There's a website also for parents here where they can have a quick quiz if they're trying to figure out, is my kid gifted? What exactly does that mean? 95th percentile or higher is typically what we're looking at on an ability test like the NNAT or the COGAT. And if they're at the 97th to 99th percentile, remember that makes them magnet qualified. Whether they're magnet qualified or not, they need 3 qualifying data points in order to be identified in a particular strength area. And they can also have more than one strength area, but they need at least 3 qualifying data points. So let's look at those for a few moments. The main things that we're looking at would be a specific academic aptitude at the 95th percentile score, with that or without, a specific talent aptitude or GI exception. So let me take a moment before looking at a few more. This does require a shorter presentation time right now, so I can check up with you in person. With the 95th percentile score would be the NNAT or the COGAT typically, okay? So there's one qualifying data point. The second qualifying data point always for any of these 4 pathways is going to be some type of observation tool. Most typically we use the SIGs, which is Scales for Identification of Gifted Students, SIGs. So I would give you access to that and you'd be looking for the 95th percentile again. The third needs to be typically tied to achievement. So we're going to look at things like PARCC CMAS. And if it says exceeds expectations in reading or math, that counts as your third data point. So you've got a cognitive score, that's the width, the 95th percentile. The SIGs, that's the scale survey. And the third would be, let's say, either the CMAS at a exceeds expectations, or you can use MAPS if your school uses MAPS. You need 2 data points, though, in an area to equal 1. So whereas the CMAS, you just need 1 data point to be equal, you would need, let's say, 95th percentile in reading in fall, and then again in spring to count as 1 data point. So that's with the 95th percentile. Without, you could get 2 PARCC scores in the same area and the SIGs, or something like PARCC and 2 data points of the MAPS, which would count, and the SIGs again. There are a few other assessments that can be used, and again, I can send you that document if you would like. That's typically then, when you think about how we do that, typically it's going to be those first two pathways. We can also do some follow-up with you, and you can talk to Stacy about doing something like ITBS or the Iowa assessment if you're looking at another data point and need our support there. The talent section is something that is kind of on hold within the districts and actually the whole state right now, because we're trying to formulate and formalize a real set criteria for that. We're looking for things like state or even national or international rankings at the top levels, top tiers. So winning, first, second, third place in their sport or in their music or in figure skating or whatever that is. We are continuing to define and clarify what that looks like. So you could put that student into talent pool where you're kind of watching them and keeping an eye, but know that they might be held there for right now as we're finalizing how we're going to move students through that pathway. And then last and very, very importantly is that GI exception. So you could have a student for a variety of reasons, including maybe being an English language learner, having a twice exceptionality, where they might have that cognitive score, like CMAS or NNAT that says they're at the 98th percentile, but nothing in terms of academics. And that can happen because if I have a child, for instance, that has high IQ, but then has a learning disability, they'll kind of pull that high IQ, will pull up their academics to what looks like an average student. And yet they're not really average. It's just that the in terms of their cognition, their disability is just kind of pulling down what they're able to do, or you could say that their higher IQ is pulling up what those scores look like to an average level. So talk with me if you feel like you might have one of those cases. We'll work on collecting a body of evidence to help that student. So these are just some graphics of the pathways. If you look at this data, the things that we're going to want to look for, and again, I'm working to keep this video short, so I'm going to go shorter here. We're looking for the 95th percentile or higher, so look at the things that are jumping out. This is MAP, so 2 of those data points is going to count as 1. Here we've got the SIGs, where we've got reading again at the 96th percentile, and here they're COGAT. We can see that they're magnet eligible, and they're going to qualify for verbal and quantitative. We could keep collecting data on math, but right now they don't have a second math data point, right? Because they're not at the 95th percentile. Here's other scenarios. You're going to start with the DPS teacher checklist before you use the SIGs, and that's just you're looking for 15 or more checks or instances of recognizing this behavior out of 30. And then you're going to go ahead with the SIGs. Here's the 96th percentile, 97th percentile again, and PARCC is exceeds expectations. They also have the NNAT as their third data point. So again, different scenarios. Remember, it's interesting to look at the checklist. It's interesting to look at DRA levels, things like that, but that would not be qualifying data points. Here's another example, someone that's distinguished at a citywide competition, judged by experts. It's something interesting to note and to possibly put into a talent pool and know that it will be housed there while we finish determining that pathway. So that's a variety of samples. In order to get into Enrich, please put this on your desktop. It's iep.dpsk12.org. You should have all been into this by now. So it's the step-by-step directions again, which I'm not going to go through because we have that already. The thing I want you to remember again, let me know once you have 3 data points for a student. There's a format we want you to enter that as, and you've had that handout already. But you're going to enter that all, and then I will check and I can move that child into a formalized ALP if you have all of that data. And there's also, you click on the Google form and let us know there. Once you're reviewing your lists, the lists you want to look at are the following. ALP and Gifted are going to pull your students that need those ALPs written by October 27th. Magnet eligible are students that may not have those 3 data points yet, but they're scoring at that 97th percentile or higher. And then some students may be listed in the identification or talent pool process if they have some data, but not all. But not all. Don't forget, if a parent asks for identification, you've got 30 days. Please review our trainings on the ITBS and SIGs. And follow the template for how to enter that data. So we are out of time on our short review, That is identification. Please email me with any questions, and I look forward to talking to you again soon. Thank you.